Welcome back to Geek Corner, part of the Coach Steve Show, which means one thing only, that there was something new that came out. Logan is here to talk about it. Logan, what's up?
Steve, I love that music. I love the intro music that you have for this show. I every time I love it so much. I'm good, man. How are you? Happy birthday.
Why,
We're
thanks.
recording this on your birthday. What is this? 32? Are we 32 now?
We are 32 years
Good
old.
lord, you are 32. I will be 32 coming up. Oh my goodness. Where did
We,
that go?
hey, here's a funny thing. I went to the eye doctor like a week and a half ago. I have not gone since we were 15. That was the last time I went. And I realized the kids I work with were not born yet the last time I went. And it made me feel even older.
Holy crap. Yeah.
Because they were like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
we were born in 2005 or 2006," and I said, "Oh, I was 16 years old when you were born. Like,
Yeah. That's
I'm old."
crazy.
And they thought I was 45, which didn't. I'm not aging well. Just put it that way. I'm not aging very well.
I think you're aging very well, Steve. I think you're aging very well. What are you drinking?
It is a
Hashtag
lemonade.
hashtag no free ads, but
Yeah, I can't pronounce it, but it's this lemonade.
oh, that's the Pellegrini. Yeah, they do
Mhm.
the water. Yep, okay. That's cool. That's fun. That sounds delicious. I'm just
Yeah,
drinking the plain water, but
this is not what people think it is on my birthday at 10 in the morning. It is literally water and lemonade.
that sounds great. Well, it's good to see you. It's good to see you. Got a lot to talk about. Well, really just one movie in particular to talk about. So I don't know that I'd say a lot to talk about, but a big movie
Yeah,
that came out this weekend.
Yeah. Wakanda Forever finally came out this weekend. It wraps up phase 4 of Marvel, even though we do have Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special and all that, but I don't think that has like
Yeah,
implication.
I don't. And
It's
I'm
kind of
not
like,
even sure if is that considered phase 4 or phase 5? Have they even like specified?
I don't know, because I remember them saying Wakanda Forever wraps up phase 4,
Yeah,
but they also have this coming out. So I don't know
right.
what they're going to
Yeah, I think it's just kind
group
of
it.
I don't think they really know what to call it either. It could just be like a phase 4 epilogue, kind of like Spider-Man Far From Home was. But yeah, phase 4 for all intents and purposes is officially in the books after a very very strange and um divisive years. 3 years, really.
Yes.
Um yeah,
Yes.
it's been a time. Been a time, but we finally reached the end of it, so I'm excited to talk about it with you.
Yes. To wrap up the COVID part, they filmed a lot of it during COVID. They had to battle a lot of things, and that's why we'll talk about phase 4 at the end, how we feel, how it went, but it's wrapped up. Like you said before, lots of projects that were done during that time, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about. But we'll talk about Wakanda Forever. It comes out. You got to see it opening night. I got to see it the Friday night of. Now, for
Yep.
me, that theater was still packed. It
Yeah.
was a big time packed movie
Oh
for
yeah,
me.
for sure. My
Uh,
theater had a few open seats, but I think those seats were sold. I think it's just people that just didn't show up for their tickets they purchased. But yeah, I mean, it's obviously a big deal. It's an MCU project. It's the sequel to arguably one of their best movies, the
mhm.
only Oscar Best Picture nominated movie the MCU's ever had. The original Black Panther was a $1 billion movie. I don't remember the exact numbers on it. So yeah, I mean, this is obviously going to draw people to the theater. And I don't know. I haven't seen the numbers. I'm sure it's doing just fine over the weekend, and it will probably continue to dominate the box office until Avatar comes out in mid-December. Would be my guess. I don't think there's really anything coming out that's really going to compete with it on this type of level. So
No,
box office
no.
wise, I'm sure it'll do fine. I saw some projections before the weekend that said it wasn't projecting to do as well as even like Thor: Love and Thunder and Doctor Strange, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Maybe more so Thor. I don't know, whatever it was. The Doctor Strange thing, though, that had on a lot of expectations that didn't actually come to fruition. That I think
Mhm,
probably drew people to the theater for the opening weekend for that.
mhm.
Um, I think we were just expecting that to be a huge movie, and we've talked about that. We don't need to talk about that movie anymore, but just in terms of box office expectations, I think that movie, just because of the name alone, I think people were expecting that movie to be more. This movie's a little different. This is obviously a sequel to a important movie, but let's just get it out of the way now. The original film star, the Black Panther, is not in
Uh-huh.
it. He obviously passed in 2020, so this is a whole new animal. So in terms of box office, it's yeah, you expect it to do well, but you have to take that for what it is because it's Chadwick Boseman is obviously not in this movie, so um, that's something to be considered when thinking about box office stuff. But yeah, it'll do fine. It'll dominate, I'm sure, for the next few weeks.
Right. Obviously spoilers for this movie, but like for me, this was a nice movie to go to and not have to think too much because I had
Right,
no expectations. I had no idea where they were going to go with it.
right,
I was more curious how they're going to handle Chadwick Boseman's
correct.
character. I had an idea of what they were going to do,
Yeah,
but how they handled it, and I just could have my brain turned off and just say, "Could I sit here and enjoy this movie as a movie?" Kind of like Black Adam. It was like I could just
right,
go turn my brain off. I have no idea.
right.
Um, no, I did just kept looking for how is it going to push this forward? Where is it going to go? Like what could this do?
Yeah,
And then I think halfway point of the movie, I said, you know what? Maybe this doesn't go anywhere. Maybe it's just kind of like Thor: Love and Thunder. We really kind of
yeah,
don't know where it was heading at the end. And I said halfway through the movie, I said, you know what? This could just be part of their Phase Four movie. Kind of,
yeah.
it's a movie to honor Chadwick Boseman a little bit there. At the beginning and the end for sure. Um, Especially the end credit scene. I did not expect that.
Right.
I thought that was really
Yeah,
cool.
we'll talk about that later. Yeah, I agree. I think this was a very contained story. I think that's what you were looking for.
Mhm,
Um, and I'm with you. I didn't really come into this movie really expecting this to, um, be a big altering thing for the future of the MCU. Now there was a reported rumor out there that this movie was going to involve a major MCU villain that we were going to see for the first time. That obviously didn't come to fruition. Um, so I think had that been actually happened, which I'm not sure if that was happening or not. I don't know all the backstory on that, but had that happened, obviously it might have been a little different. But really, I mean, this was I saw somebody else point this out, and I think it's worth noting. I mean, this whole phase has been a lot of passing of the torch type of things.
mhm,
And I don't think I was obvious. I don't know that that was the plan for this movie originally, but it kind of fit into the rest of Phase Four. It was um, Sam Wilson taking over as Captain America, and Kate Bishop coming in Hawkeye, and Yelena Belova coming in Black Widow. Um, Now, kind of Shuri, taking over the Black Panther mantle. Yeah, I think this phase was a lot of that of, you know, um, new people coming into new roles and passing of the torch of all these things. So, other than that, yeah, this was a very self-contained story.
mhm,
It had a very powerful beginning, a very powerful end. The bulk of the story we can get into on how powerful it was. It was obviously mostly about grieving,
mhm,
but in terms of, you know, what to expect from this movie going into it, yeah, it ended up being very, very self-contained and didn't really have a lot to do with outside of the worlds of Telecon and Wakanda,
mhm.
which is fine. Like you know, that's absolutely what a good movie should be. So I have no issues with that.
Right. I did see reports. The movie starts, they have to immediately address Chadwick Boseman's character,
Right.
and he had some type of sickness, passes away. They have a big funeral, big send off. I did see an article title, which I didn't read yesterday, saying how people are divided on how they handled him. And my whole thing to get that out of the way was Marvel had 2 options when he passed away. They had 2 options. They could scrap the whole movie and say, "You know what? We will address him later on in some other movie." Or they could just make the movie, figure out how to address it, and there's no way to address how to handle that. So,
Yeah.
me personally, I was okay with how it was handled.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know why people are so divided. I don't know why they thought.
So I mean, there was a big movement out there, a big segment of the fan base out there. A lot of them are big comic book people that felt like they were doing Chadwick Boseman and T'Challa and Black Panther a disservice by not recasting him.
Mm,
Um, I never really got into that conversation. I didn't really give my thoughts on that. I didn't really chime into that discussion. I don't think you and I ever really talked about it on here. Um, I was fine with doing it how they did it.
Hmm.
Um, I certainly you can make a case for just recasting him and just continuing where they left off with a new actor. But I'm a fan of how they handled it.
Hmm.
And I don't know if we want to get into the end credit mid credit thing yet or not, but like I'm fine with how they handled it. I'm fine with let's just get into this. This movie was I was texting a friend after it, and my friend Carson, and he made a good point. He said it's very strategic that on the poster for this movie, Wakanda Forever is in the big text. This is much less of a Black Panther
Hmm.
movie than
Hmm.
it is a movie about Wakanda and about these remaining characters that are involved in this. The Black Panther, we do not see anybody wearing the Black Panther suit until the last 40 minutes of this movie.
Hmm.
So the first two ish hours or whatever, it's the words Black Panther are mentioned, but it's not about that. It's not about that. It's not about um, that particular role. Whoever is going to wear that suit. This is about Wakanda. This is
Hmm.
about these remaining characters. It's about Shuri and Ramonda and Okoye and Nakia and M'Baku. Plus, you throw in, um, Namor and whatever. But like, it's about Wakanda. This movie is
Right.
about Wakanda. It is far less about who's wearing the Black Panther suit at the end of the
Right.
day. And I think that was handled well. It's
Yes.
a very it kind of helps with the whole contained storyline, um, and I think it worked. I think for the most part, I think it worked. I certainly don't think this is a perfect movie, and we'll get into that. I have plenty of things that I think it had, plenty of flaws. I think it had, but in terms of handling the Chadwick Boseman thing, the T'Challa thing, I think it handled it well. If you ask me,
Yes. Yeah. I just want to get that out of the way first from seeing that article because I thought this is perfect. If you're going to make the movie, this is how you're going to do it. Because you could have scrapped it. You could have sat there and said, you know what, this
I
isn't going
agree.
to work. I think it would have been weird if they recast him. If he was not in Infinity War, if he didn't have the impact in Endgame, if he wasn't in Civil War, if it was just the Black Panther movie, and that's the first time we saw Chadwick Boseman,
Yeah.
maybe you could have recasted him and like got away with it. Kind of like Harrison Ford is being recasted, to play, the general.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and I think those 2 things are a little different, and I've seen that
right,
conversation too, with, um, William Hurt dying, so they're recasting his role as Thunderbolt Ross with Harrison Ford. I think those are 2 very different things.
right,
He Thunderbolt Ross was in bits and pieces of a couple of movies, but I don't think he was that important of a role for them
no,
to do that with. So, yeah, I was
right.
fine with it.
Which I love Harrison Ford coming in. That's just
I do
he's
too.
a big time name. But yeah, like it's hard to recast the Chadwick Boseman in that. So I'm
Yeah,
perfectly fine. Not, I think that would have almost been a big disservice to recast almost like
right.
in my opinion, to Chadwick Boseman as a person. I think like for him, like
Yeah,
you can't recast this character who he made big in Civil War, big in Black Panther.
yeah,
Um, he had a big time role in Infinity War. They showed him the first person. He was the first person they showed come back in Endgame, like that type of impact
yeah.
where you just can't. So they handled that part fine.
It just led to an interesting choice and an interesting decision that Ryan Coogler made this movie about grief.
Mhm.
That is what this movie is about. This movie is, I would say, 65% about grief, and the
Especially
rest of
just
it
later
is
on.
about these 2 countries trying to go at it. And I mean, it's so that was a choice that they made. If had they recast him, obviously that wouldn't have been a factor in this movie at all. They probably would have put something up at the beginning or the end that said, remembering Chadwick Boseman, and that'd be it. That we would just move on. But they made that choice, and I think they handled it well.
Yes. Um, yep, no complaints on that. Phase 4 is a lot of grief, which we'll get into at the very end. You see
Yeah,
a lot of grief, you see a lot of handing of the torches, like you said, like She-Hulk, even though Hulk will be around, like that's kind of like, here you go. But a lot of grief in this movie. There were great things about this movie. I thought the visual effects were very good. I liked a lot of it. When they showed the underwater, when they showed his world and everything, that whole sequence I thought was great. Wakanda, anytime they show Wakanda in a Marvel movie, it looks visually good. I like it. There's no issues with that. Um, I like how we got introduced to a new character of Ironheart to kind of lead
Mhm.
into their TV show. I can't remember if they said her name during it. I cannot
Yeah,
remember.
Riri Williams is the
Okay.
character's name, yeah.
Um, I did enjoy all of that. Um, uh, but there was a lot of clunkiness, and this is where I
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. I mean, before you get into that, which I think is obviously something we need to talk about, I just want to say this: Ryan Coogler was given and took on really a nearly impossible task of doing this movie. There are so many things that either he chose to put into this movie or he was told to put into this movie to make this work. We've already talked about the grief thing. We are introducing a new character in Namor, plus
Mhm,
introducing a new character in Riri Williams. Plus, you're trying to focus on all five of these remaining characters, these main characters from the previous movie. Um, there was just a lot here. There was a lot in this movie. And yes, I do think some of it was clunky. And I don't think all of it worked. And there are parts of it in particular that I don't think worked. But I think given all the things that they had to do in this movie, I think they did it pretty well.
mhm.
Um, I, yeah, it's not perfect, and we'll talk about that. But I do think given everything that was asked of him and that he took on to do. I mean, they chose to do the whole guilt or the grieving thing. That's obviously a choice that they made. Um, but yeah, I think they handled it very well, all things considered. But yes, it had some flaws. So yeah, you can go ahead with your other stuff, the clunky part, because I agree with you.
Um, I didn't like the her mom dying part. That part was a little strange. I understand the whole grieving thing, and you have to have something like that happen to make sure he become the Black Panther. That was kinda like the final straw, which I understood, but I was like it was like repeating itself to me where you have this funeral, then all of a sudden she dies, boom, here's another one, and it looks similar, and I said, "I don't like that storyline part of it where now we have another funeral, now she's really, like, all alone and everything else." Um, that part I didn't understand, and you can correct me, I just it happened,
No,
and I was like, "Really?" Like, this is where we're going to repeat ourselves from the very beginning of the movie to have a very similar storyline now. Like, now she's gonna make this decision. I didn't understand it
um,
at first.
I don't think there's any correcting you. I don't think you're wrong to think that. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Um, I think that they did that as a you mentioned the whole Shuri thing. I think that was a necessary plot device in the middle of the movie in order to further her story along. Yes, we had already had the loss at the very beginning, but we didn't really get to experience any of that. We kind of just it happened. We know it happened. We saw that she was trying to save him and that she couldn't, and it just happened. So now we're whatever they said a year, however long later. So was it necessary? I don't know. But I don't. In my opinion, I don't think it hurt the movie. Um, I think it was just it was a way to help move her story along, which led her to the whole thing with the ancestral plane, with her seeing Killmonger and not her mom or her brother. Um, I saw somebody was saying like, why did she not see her brother? Well, I mean, Chadwick
Yeah,
Boseman not
he's
he
blo
he can't shoot those scenes. So like that's part of it. Let's factor that in here too. I know that's unfortunate that we're saying that, but like that's certainly a part of it. But I obviously as a big part of that story was like why was she doing it? Why was she becoming Why did she want to become the Black Panther? You know, when Killmonger took over and wanted to be the Black Panther, it was out of vengeance. He wanted revenge on the
Mhm.
people that had wronged him. When Chadwick did it, he was doing it to protect his people. Shuri, why was Shuri doing it? Was she doing it for revenge because he had killed her mom, or was she doing it to protect her people? I think I think it's important. As I said, is it necessary that they had to kill her? I don't know. They could have found another way, but I think it worked fine with how the story progressed from there, because that was the fork in the road situation for her. You know,
Mhm.
why did she do this? Is it because of revenge, or is it because she's trying to protect her people? And we thought for a while she was going to break bad and she was going to be, doing it out of vengeance. And who knows where the story could go from there. But ultimately, her mom did essentially speak to her, and she was able to, make that decision that she was doing it for protection of her people and not for revenge. So I see where you're coming from, though. My biggest issue, not my biggest issue, one of the issues I had with the story in general, I don't know why we needed the whole thing with Everett Ross and Val. It was cool to
Yes.
see. It was great to see her. I had no issues seeing her on screen. Um,
Yes.
but I don't know what we were doing there. I don't know if he was only with the rest of the he only had one other scene with anybody else from the rest of the cast when Shuri and Okoye
Mhm.
first come to visit him. That's the only time he's on screen with anybody. So,
Right.
like, in my mind, I'm thinking, like, was there like a production related issue where he wasn't able to be with the rest of the cast? So they just brought in Julia Louis Dreyfus to like share the screen with him for a few scenes as somebody to play off of. Um, and like, I'm fine with her being in this movie, but I figured if she's going to show up, she's going to have a moment with a character where she's, like every other time she's shown up in this universe so far, she's essentially recruiting another member of the Thunderbolts. So I thought,
Right.
okay, well, she's obviously going to, I don't know if that's a name or necessarily somebody in this movie she's going to go recruit. That doesn't happen. She's literally just there as we learn that they used to be married, and we learn that she's higher up in the government now or whatever. So I guess that's the purpose of it. But like that went nowhere. The whole thing.
Right.
I get wanting to bring him back because he was a member of the original movie. So maybe I don't know, and I could be totally off on that, but like maybe that's why. Maybe he just wasn't able to shoot this movie with the rest of these people. I don't know what else he's doing. He's not exactly the world's busiest actor, but I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. I don't think that worked very well. I don't think it meshed very well. I don't understand why she was there. So that to me was like the biggest. It also added like 20 minutes, 30 minutes to this movie, a movie that
Yeah.
was already 2 hours and 40 minutes long or whatever it was. That was like story wise to me the biggest issue. Um,
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, and this isn't anything to do with the story, but I saw somebody else said this on Twitter, so I'm glad that I wasn't alone. Did you feel like your movie experience that it was very dark, that the screen was very dark, and a lot of things were hard to see?
Um.
I thought it was just me and like my particular experience with it, but like a lot of these shots, a lot of this movie takes place at night.
Yes. Yes.
And like there's all the stuff with like the water, the
That
the
was
whole
very hard.
scene where Ramonda and Shuri are she's burning the her clothes or whatever. They have that moment, and then Namor comes up from the water. I found that scene to be super hard to see. So
That
I
was
thought
very.
it was just like me and my particular theater experience. But I saw somebody else of note tweeted out that he also had some similar thoughts with it. So I wasn't sure if you felt the same way about yours, because I just found some certain scenes of the movie to be very hard to see.
That part was hard to see when he was, even though the visual effects were good when it was bright, when he was
Yeah,
showing his underwater world, that too was hard to see at the beginning. At the beginning, when they get to
yeah,
that big ball thing that comes up and it like brightens
yes,
everything,
yeah,
that looked fine. But
yeah,
getting there, it looked, even when they were, I'm gonna call it a cave, where they were first kind of trapped there.
right,
Looking
yes,
back at it,
yes. That was also hard to see too. Yeah, I agree.
um,
Um, yeah,
the car chasing scene I thought was fine. That had Black Panther 1 vibes when they were
right,
doing the
yeah.
same thing.
A lot of it, that was very similar to the first movie, and I thought there was a couple other action sequences that were very reminiscent of the original Black Panther movie. Also, I mean the Riri Williams first scene in the the Iron Man suit, the Ironheart suit, that was, very much like the first Iron Man movie when he's, testing out his first, version, the Mark 1 or whatever it is. That was
And
also very
and
similar to Iron Man.
her
Yeah.
hammering it
That
like
yep,
a speeder, just
yep,
like what he did.
yep.
Um, but yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think of that because I remember I kinda remember at the time going, "I can't really see."
Yeah.
I remember that now, but then
Yeah.
it just goes away when they brighten it up. I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I don't know if that was an issue with production or if that was just particular theater screens or what. But yeah, I just thought that personally, and then when I saw somebody else tweet it out, I thought, okay, well maybe it wasn't just me then.
Did you have Avatar vibes too? Because
Oh yeah, for sure.
I sure
Um, this was absolutely Black Panther Way of Water.
yes.
It's it was yeah. I mean, it's two groups of people. Um, going at it for whatever reason. One of them is blue. A lot of it takes place in water. Yeah, this felt like a precursor to what's going to be on the screen here in a few weeks. Um, yeah, very much so. Like I felt like, okay, well, I feel like I'm going to see this same movie again. Um, and in a few weeks with Avatar. Yeah, very much. I thought that same thing.
I didn't know if I was the only one because
No. Oh no. No, no,
I
no.
didn't I didn't wanna tweet I didn't wanna tweet anything out because I want people to see it,
No.
you know?
Very
But
as very much. Yeah.
I wanted to tweet that out going, "Hey, if you wanna watch Avatar, go watch Wakanda Forever because you're gonna have the same feel
Yeah.
and the same tone."
Yeah.
Um, but
I
that is a
would I would guess that Avatar will look better.
yes, it just
Just
had
because
vibe.
he's been working on it for so long, and the first one was such a visual masterpiece. I mean, the first Black Panther is good, but I think obviously it's been well documented that that movie's biggest flaws were some of its visuals and some of its action sequences, and I don't think this one improves on a lot of that very much. I know it still looks good, most of it, especially like the water stuff, but I still think some of those some of those shots in this movie were the green screen was terrible. Like,
Yeah,
there's a couple shots of M'Baku and the rest of his group standing, like, the cities, like, behind him. It was
uh
awful. It was awful. Like, it was so incredibly green screen. I mean, I know that a lot of these movies are green screen, so, like, that's nothing new, but, like, it was just very obvious to me, like, "Okay, that's
yeah,
just a couple guys standing in front of a screen for sure."
right. Like, that was my whole thing. I did say it was visually looking good, but it was like half the movie looked
Yeah.
really good.
That's kind of the nature of this world we live in right now. All of these big CGI projects are not haven't been fully I don't think they've been fully complete. I think they've continued to be backed up with all these TV shows and movies that these studios are being forced to put out there that it's backing everything up. And I don't think we've had a great, like breathtakingly visual experience in the MCU in quite a while. I mean, Eternals probably the best visually,
Mhm,
but I think that was more because they chose to actually shoot that movie on sets and not there was not as much of that was shot in a studio in
mhm,
Atlanta. A lot of that movie was actually shot on location.
right.
So I think that's probably why it was one of the better visual movies. I know that's one of the weaker movies, but I think visually speaking, I think it's been one of the better ones lately. But yeah, I think this one was fine. I think the visuals look great, but there obviously were some moments where I thought, yeah, okay, I don't think we've really improved on anything since the first one.
Yeah, because like, they said Doctor Strange didn't use a lot of CGI, he wanted to use
Practical, yeah,
practical things,
yeah,
so there you could tell when they use CGI there. Um, Kinda similar to Black Adam where they didn't wanna use all this other stuff, but it was similar. But that's a
yeah.
good point. I'm trying to think of the last, like, besides Eternals, like, really good 'cause, like
I think Shang-Chi looked good. I think that whole world they created, whatever it was called, looked really good.
uh
Um, I don't know that the last fight scene was all the greatest thing, but as a whole, I think that movie looked good. So, what'd you think of Namor?
Um, so I saw this today. So this is going to intertwine with that. Well, first, you were right. Killmonger was in this movie. You said you had a feeling he'd
Yeah,
be back.
yeah.
He
Most
was
of
there.
my theories did not pan out to be true, but yeah, he did. He did show up in this movie briefly.
I liked him, but the question became which one was the better villain, him or Killmonger? That's been the big question.
I mean, I think they're both. I think they're both pretty good villains in the sense that I don't, and it's like also like Thanos. I don't think that any of them were necessarily um the reasons that they were doing the things they were doing weren't bad reasons. Like they had reasons to be doing what they were doing. Now their way about doing it wasn't exactly kosher. But I think that's what makes a good villain in some of these movies. So yeah, I mean, I would probably put Killmonger higher um in terms of like best villain, but I don't think that Namor is going to necessarily be he's not he is a villain. He's an antagonist. But I don't think he's necessarily like the bad guy all the time. Kind of like Loki. Loki's not always going to be the bad guy. Um Killmonger, had they not killed him and had he been able to do more, that might have been a little different. But we're gonna see Namor a lot more. Obviously, Killmonger showed up briefly in this movie, but I don't expect him to be more involved than just a cameo here and there from now on. But Namor will definitely have a future with in the MCU, whether or not that's tied to a Black Panther project or not. I would still say Killmonger is probably the better villain,
Right.
but I really liked Namor. I really liked his performance,
Yep.
and I like that story. And I'm excited to see him because I think he did really well. That actor was great. So I was all for it.
Yeah, I liked him. I just saw that. I just saw that not poll, but I saw that question. I
I mean,
like
he's definitely one of the better antagonists the MCU's had. The MCU's had some bad villains,
yes.
and he's certainly towards the upper echelon of them for sure.
And I do like how they gave us his little storyline, like
Right.
immediately when she goes there and they're in that cave, immediately he was like, she's asking, "How did this happen?" Well, and immediately went to his story and gave that whole thing. Like we still don't really know a lot about Thanos. We were hoping maybe Internals 2 it gets to some stuff like that. That'd be cool to see. Because he is an Eternal, I guess. That's kind of
He's a mutant.
well,
That's his thing.
who
I don't
Thanos
know.
or
Oh, I thought you were talking about. Sorry, I thought you were talking about Namor. Yeah,
but
Thanos is essentially an Eternal. Yeah.
but it's interesting though that this is the second time we've seen the word mutant pop up. It was popped up in Miss Marvel.
Yep.
Now it's popped up here,
Yep.
and we have not heard that word. So
Yep.
I guess we're slowly entering the mutant type world, um,
Yeah.
which is awesome to kind of hear. And I think they said that they said they weren't allowed to say anything mutant wise in Marvel
They weren't.
until they had the rights.
No, like that's what Wanda Maximoff is a mutant in the
Yeah.
comics. She is a mutant, but for whatever reason, I guess I don't know. We don't need to get into that, but I guess since she was technically a part of both the Avengers and the X-Men, and Marvel, like the MCU, kind of grabbed her first, they were able to use her, but they couldn't refer to her as a mutant. So they had to change her background and who she was to bring her in.
Okay.
But yeah, before the Fox merger, the MCU wasn't able to use the word mutant. So yeah, this is just the second time, as you said, that we've heard that word. I don't think we're not gonna get an X-Men movie now for a few years still. I think that'll be probably phase 7 is my guess that we'll start
Uh-huh.
seeing mutant movies. That probably might be the entire phase of them, but yeah, we're gonna start seeing them slowly pop up. I think here and there.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
I just thought that was cool. That's why I liked him, like the way he popped up first, even though we couldn't really see him because it was dark and the way it was
yeah,
filmed. But then seeing his whole world, the way he acted there and was shown why he kind of became a quote unquote villain of like
Yeah.
why this is happening, and then when they killed that lady trying to save uh Shuri and all that, like the way he handled that. And you're right, he's a villain, but he's not one of these villains that's 100% like I'm going to kill everybody. He kind of understands he's got to protect his people. That's why it was one of those weird things of we understand why he's doing this. Um, we just look as Wakanda as like the heroes because we've seen them for so long. But in his eyes, he's like, wait, I'm doing the same thing you're doing. So it was just really the acting was great. I liked him. I liked the mutant part of it. So that's a nice way to slowly bits and pieces until like 2026 or 2027 when they're like, okay, here's X-Men or Deadpool. I guess Deadpool will be the first time with Hugh Jackman coming back.
Yeah. That's
I'm,
true.
that'll probably be the first time really we start to see them introduce X-Men.
Yeah.
You would think that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, that's where they're gonna do it. We were talking about box office earlier. I just saw this on Twitter, so I thought I'd bring it up. Black Panther opened with $180 million debut, which is the second highest grossing opening, second biggest opening of the year. Probably behind Top Gun, I would assume. Yeah, definitely behind Top Gun. So that's pretty impressive. I think it's still. He said this is. I'm coming from Eric Weber on Twitter. He said it was $22 million shy of the original Black Panther's opening.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I haven't seen like I'll probably see it later in terms of like ranking, all these things, but just of note. So it did end up doing better than I think those projections even. So that's a pretty good weekend for this movie. It helps that it opened on a holiday weekend.
Yes.
Still.
Yes. Um, what did you think of the end credit scene where we see
I
baby
think
T'Challa?
I think that was I personally, we've already gone on to the whole recast T'Challa thing. I think this was the best way of handling it.
Yes.
If you ask me, I think that letting these characters grieve for the loss of this other character, letting Shuri take over the mantle for a couple. I'm sure this won't be the last time this won't be the last time we see her as the Black Panther.
Mhm.
She will be the Black Panther moving forward, but giving us a new character named T'Challa, that makes all the sense in the world. I didn't see it coming.
No.
But I'm certainly glad that that's what they did. Um, I think that was perfect. If you want to know my opinion, I think it was the best possible outcome for it, and I loved it. I thought that that was honestly the best part of the movie. Was that? That's really the only part of this movie that I've really thought about that much since then. So I was very much a fan of that decision.
Yes, again, that's why I was very confused when people were mad about the way they handled him at the beginning, and I'm like, "Okay, I can sorta kinda understand where you're coming from," but then how they handled it at the end should be able to make up for that and say, "We have a Black Panther still, like, sure, he's the Black Panther,
Yep.
but now we have his son that has his name, that now you can really for sure recast
Yep.
that
Right.
character
Exactly.
for future time when
Yes.
the time is right to bring him back, which is perfect. So if you're
Right.
talking about recasting,
Yes.
this is so Kevin
Now you
Feige.
can. Now you can. It
Kevin
may not
Feige,
happen right away. I don't know if
right?
they do a Black Panther 3, I don't imagine that that's going to happen for that movie. But it does mean that down the road, yes, they can recast that character and it leaves them open. We haven't really talked about her, but I was really pleasantly surprised and pleased with Letitia Wright in this movie. I was concerned about this. I know she's caused some drama in the world of Hollywood, and I wasn't sure. We didn't know that she was going to be taking over this mantle. It wasn't given. That was kind of the most likely scenario.
Mhm.
Um, but she was the focal point of this movie. She wasn't. I mean, I thought this was going to be a really ensemble movie, and it was, but I thought it would be more divvied out in terms of roles. Nakia didn't even come on screen. Lupita Nyong'o's character didn't even come on screen for like the first 40 minutes. at least.
Mhm.
Um, so I thought this would be like in terms of screen time and lines and that type of thing. I thought it'd be more evenly spaced. Um, and I think I did say on here, I think my prediction was that multiple people would wear the Black Panther suit.
Mhm.
Uh, that didn't come to fruition either. But I was impressed. I was very pleased by Letitia Wright. I think she was very good. They gave her a lot to do, and she had to carry a lot of this movie. And I think she was great. And would I have rather seen maybe another? It's not that I would have seen a rather would have seen a different character wear the Black Panther suit. I think that she is the right character for it. I would have probably rather seen a different actor wear the Black Panther suit. Um, but I'm fine with it. After her performance in this movie, I'm okay with it. I'm
Mhm.
okay with her being this role for the foreseeable future,
Yep.
until they decide to, bring in a new T'Challa, which they will obviously eventually. So I was very pleased with her in this movie.
Yeah. Her acting knocked it out of the park. I had no
Yeah,
complaints about her. It was more of like story clunkiness, which again,
yeah,
that's
I
another
agree.
that's another thing with Phase 4 that we've had to deal with is
There was
something.
just a lot to do. There was
Yeah.
just a lot to do in this movie, and
Yeah.
whoever's decision that was, whatever. Um, I think this movie was pretty. It was good. I think this movie was good. I don't think it's certainly not top tier MCU. It's definitely not better than the first Black Panther in my opinion. Um, oh, Angela Bassett, Ramonda was great as well.
Mhm.
I've seen some people talking best supporting actress competition or consideration for her, and I think that would be deserved. This movie is not getting nominated for Best Picture like the first one did.
Mhm.
I'll tell you that right now. But I could certainly see that happening, depending on how the rest of the field looks. Because I think she was great. I think this movie does deserve to have some sort of recognition, you know, from the Oscars and that type of thing. So I think
She
that's probably the most likely candidate, other than like original song, which obviously it will too with the Rihanna song at the end. But she was
whew,
great in the movie.
she killed it at the beginning in that
Yeah.
courtroom scene. I was like,
Yep. I agree.
"Oh,
Yes.
the power," and people in the theater were yelling, "You go get it." They're yelling
Yep.
stuff like it
Yep.
was the best.
Yeah. She was
Uh,
great.
she killed it. And I like, I can never say her name right, Diana, Guri, who
Yeah.
plays the movie.
Uh, yeah.
I like her from
Okoye.
the Walk
Yep.
I like her from The Walking Dead, and then she
Yep.
went over to the MCU world. Her scenes with them, she'll be around for a long time in the
Oh
MCU.
yes. She's really good.
She's coming back to The Walking Dead for a spinoff thing, so that's cool to see her come back for that. Um, but I like to bring her up too because she killed it in Walking Dead, killed it in the Black Panther, has hilarious quotes in Infinity War. Was around
Yep.
it, like she's been around. Like people don't
Yeah.
even remember that she was around in Infinity War. She was around in Endgame. She's around in other parts of these movies. Um, did you expect to see the Winter Soldier in this movie at all? Was there any thought where like maybe he was going to pop up because of the connection from Falcon the Winter Soldier? I thought of that in the movie. Like, I wonder if he's going to pop up.
It never crossed my mind. But that, I mean, yeah, that wouldn't have shocked me necessarily. They had enough to do in this movie as it was, so I wasn't expecting it. But I mean, that wouldn't have surprised me if he would have.
And
Um,
do you also think that they had to address all this stuff in this movie because they're not really going to do a third one?
well, I don't think that's necessarily ruled out. I think it's already been reported that they've talked about it. I don't know whether they will. I don't know what the future is. I know there was at one point, and there still might be, a plan in place for a Wakanda related show
Oh yeah, that's
that
right.
Coogler's supposed to be producing or show
Yeah.
running. That necessarily is not necessarily about the Black Panther, but about the people,
Mhm.
which that's what this movie was. This movie was about the people. So, but I've also seen them talk about potentially doing a third movie. This character will continue to show up.
Mhm.
Whoever, it'll be Letitia Wright's Shuri character, for the time being. But maybe I just think they just had a lot to do. They were trying to do all these things, plus introduce this new character in this new world and this other new character, and set her up for her show coming up next year, and just also give all these other great actors like the screen time they deserve and
Mhm.
give them, stuff to do. And I think they had a lot to do to make this movie successful. And I think they did. I think this movie was successful. Obviously, box office wise, we've already mentioned. I think it's successful. Um, I think they did as honestly. I think they did probably as good as they could have for all
Yep.
things considered with this.
Yep. Um, and again, said it before. I just liked how you could just kind of sit there and watch it.
Yep.
Where a lot of the movies we watched outside of like, I mean, I guess Eternals and all that, we kind of didn't know where it was going. But like when you watch Doctor Strange, when you watch Thor and them, you kind of sit there and go, okay, where's it going? Because these are characters we've already seen. Like, where's it going?
Yeah.
With if Chadwick Boseman was in this movie, maybe that changes it a little bit of like, okay, where are we going to go? Because he's here. With him being gone and everything up in the air, we could just sit there, enjoy it. Um, and we still don't know where it was going, and that's fine. We don't know if they'll be around. I mean, they'll be around for Avengers. We don't know if they're going to be around again for a while. Besides that TV show, if it comes out whenever that's going to pop up, um, I don't think we'll see them in Thunderbolts because that's a good point when you're talking about what's her face, who's recruiting the
Val,
Thunderbolts. That's
Val.
what I was expecting when she was there. I was
Yeah.
like, does she go talk to Shuri about maybe she will be in Thunderbolts or something? But we didn't get that. So I was like, well, again, you're right. What was the point of her?
Yeah, so I kind of hinted at this earlier, but I never said, do you know what character I'm referring to when I said that there was I think a rumor that there was a much bigger character that was supposed to be part of this movie? Were you in on those rumors?
Was it Steve Rogers?
No, Doctor Doom.
Oh yeah. Oh,
The
villain. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
the
yeah.
original speculation is that Doctor Doom was supposed to be a major part of this movie. And I listened to the Big Picture is a movie podcast I listen to all the time, and they were talking about it over the weekend. And the theory that Van Lathan gave on there is that because there was also the whole thing at the beginning with Lake Bell's character, she was working with whoever and they came in and blew up their ship and she died and all this stuff. Like she's like a fairly big name actor to just show up and just be gone like that. It
Right.
was like a glorified cameo.
Right.
Um, what he was saying that he has seen is that she was supposed to be working for Doctor Doom, and that there was supposed to be some other connection that he was supposed to be, because that for the longest time that was the rumor about this movie, is that he is the actual villain of this movie, not Namor. Namor is obviously he was still in the movie. They didn't add him later, but the actual villain of the movie was supposed to be Doctor Doom. Whether or not he was going to be in it the whole time, I don't know. But ultimately, it sounds like they might have cut that, but they let that Lake Bell character in there and just kind of killed her off. I don't know if Val came in to kind of replace that. I don't know. And we may never know like what happened here. It just some of it just didn't make sense. I don't know why she was there, what she was there for, and maybe they'll explain it later. Maybe she did end up recruiting somebody. I don't know who it would be. There's nobody. I don't think anybody in that movie really comes off as a Thunderbolt type of role. I mean, Namor is an anti-hero, but I don't think he's Thunderbolt material.
No.
That's a bunch of like B-list characters. So I don't know, but that's
Just
maybe we'll
just
find out later.
just to show how big of a person she really is. I have no idea.
Yeah,
Or maybe
I don't know.
maybe they want to set up where it's like now you know who she works for and what this role is in this world, and then in this other world with the Thunderbolts, this is who she is. I have no idea,
Yeah.
but we could have done without. See, I don't think that would have ruined the movie,
No, I don't think any of that would have ruined the movie. I think that was probably the movie's weakest part. Not that it was bad, it just felt unnecessary and just added time to the movie that we didn't really need.
especially
So
when you cut down Thor and Doctor Strange from this 2 hour, 2.5 hour movie down to 2 hours. You could have cut that down and made this movie less. But
let's rank phase 4. Or do you want to talk about phase 4 first? Should we talk about phase
uh
4?
yeah, so phase 4 is done. There's been a couple themes for phase 4 that you see. We talk about grief. We talk about a lot of grief happening, a lot of handing of the torches, a lot of character recovery from
The
Endgame.
blip. Yep.
Yep, a lot of that. That was a big theme at the beginning. Because definitely when they kicked off, I kind of hate how Spider-Man Far From Home is part of Phase 3. I feel like that should be Phase 4, but that's just me because you can't. Endgame should have just ended it, but that's just me. Because that movie has a lot of grief in it for Peter Parker a little bit, which he gets more of in No Way Home, but he has some grief in that one. Like WandaVision, what was that about? That was a lot of grief. Um, Falcon the Winter Soldier, grief and recovery of what happens. Um, so just a lot of that, a lot of projects done. There was a ton done that we have to watch and grow or not grow, watch and figure out. Um, I really don't know other themes besides like introducing new characters and kind of moving on from the old ones and grief
Yeah.
and pain for characters on there. Um, if you watch everything, there's some type of pain besides like She-Hulk. She doesn't have to really have the effect of like Thanos and all that, um, Miss Marvel and all that, but there is a lot of grief in Phase
Yeah.
4. A lot of things they
Absolutely.
overcome with filming during COVID. I sit here to this day that projects are slowly getting out of that because a lot of things were filmed during COVID. You watch some of these stuff, you see only certain characters are around certain characters for the longest time because they had to film in pods and say you guys are only around each other. Like in everything, you watch all TV shows outside of Marvel, you're seeing that type of filming, and Marvel is slowly getting out of that.
Yeah.
I think Black Panther is kind of like that first point to me of like, look at all these characters, they're kind of around each other. So hopefully you're getting out of that COVID restriction filming. Um, do you think phase out of all that is phase 4 a waste? Because some do, they're like, what a waste of movies, and like it's not a really good phase. But I think you also have to remember it's almost like starting over when
Yeah.
you're doing this.
I don't think it was a waste, but yeah, it was certainly not. It was not a particularly strong phase of movies. Some of those issues were out of their control.
Mhm.
We've already talked about a lot of them on the show. The pandemic played a large role in this. The introduction of Disney Plus played a large role in this. They've had to be Kevin Feige and his role in this has had to be spread pretty thin
Mhm.
between all the TV shows and all the movies. Um, we've I think we as a fan base has had a lot of expectations. We were gifted with the back to back, or not back to back, but 2 years in a row of Infinity War and Endgame.
Mhm.
Two just colossal movies that I think worked really, really, really well. I mean, of all the 30 some movies they've done, those are two of the very best. Um, so for that to happen in 2017 and 28 or no 2018 and 2019, is that what it was? 2018 and 2019.
Mhm.
For that to happen in those 2 years, and then for us to get this what's happened these past 3 years, I think it's fair to be critical. I don't think the MCU is in trouble. I don't think a lot of these things, but yeah, there are certainly issues that they're going to have to figure out. They're going to have to figure out how to give us better quality with all these projects. They're maybe they decide to change some things. Maybe, as I said on the last show, maybe Disney is able to find some other properties that they can put on Disney Plus that alleviate some of the pressure for Marvel Studios to crank out a new project every 3 months. Um, I mean that's a problem,
Mhm.
and it's a serious problem when you're relying on Marvel and Star Wars to carry your streaming
Mhm.
service. Carry. Um, that has to be to me that's the biggest issue. Um, and it's unfortunate because the movies are what's suffering because of that.
Right.
I think this phase has had some strengths. I think it's definitely had some weaknesses. I think overall, though, I think it's far. I don't know if ranking the phases where it would fit in. I think it's probably better than Phase One. But Phase One was super early. We didn't really know what this thing was.
Right.
Um, you know, several of those movies weren't super. So I mean, it may be better than that, but Phase Two and Phase Three, it's hard to really top those. Um, I think there's more ahead. I think we finally know like where we're going now that we know that we're getting two Avengers movies over however many years from now. We know where they're going. We know Kang is going to be a big part of this. We know we're eventually going to get the Fantastic Four, and I think it'll be fine.
Mhm.
But there obviously are issues that I don't know that will get better. They're just going to have to figure that out.
Right.
Um, and I guess we'll just kind of see where we go. But it's going to be a busy next few years. We already know everything that's coming out in Phase 5, and then Phase 6 will be here before you know it. So
Mhm.
slowly over the course of time, they'll start releasing what those projects are going to be too. We know a good number of them now, especially since they had to move everything around after Blade. But um, yeah, I haven't like hated this phase of movies and TV shows. It's not been as good as Phase 3, and
No.
we've had super high expectations, and then they tease us with things. Um, I think I I know this is going to be maybe a hot take, especially on this show, and this isn't the fault of anybody, but I think I think Multiverse of Madness was a very I think it's going to end up being a very important part of this whole thing, because not necessarily the movie as a whole. The movie, as we've learned, was very contained in terms of doing things, but I think that's really where the fan base learned to temper its expectations.
Mhm.
When they give us this movie that they're calling Multiverse of Madness, we're expecting all these things to happen. We're expecting them to introduce the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and all these things. And they somewhat do these things, but it's really more of a tease. I think that's going to end up being very important. Um, because I think it's going to lead us to come into some of these movies now not lowering expectations, but expect the expectations of what we think we're going to be seeing. I think that's going to be important down the road.
Yeah. Low, and maybe that's what Marvel did on purpose.
Yeah,
Where like we can lower expectations, and then
could be.
when something does happen in a movie, they're going to be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah,
Um, so that's a very good point of that, because that's another part of this Phase Four is we had these. It was unfair to Phase Four, like you said, to end with such big time movies, and then part of Phase Four was No Way Home. That became a huge time movie, and now we expect that out of everything.
yep,
I think, like, if it wasn't for all that, maybe we don't think, and if they didn't have the title Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, then our expectations may not be as high of
right.
what could happen with that. So I think Marvel did set them up, and Disney set them up for a little bit of not. You could call it failure, I guess, but you could call it for like setbacks. You could call it for whatever. But yeah, Phase Four, I just think we had this high expectation of where it was going to go with this mutant thing. Uh, we know multiverse was coming up. Where is that happening? And we still don't have answers to some of that. We got to see multiverse
No,
a little bit in Loki, talked about like the timeline and everything, and then Doctor Strange. Because we all thought WandaVision was that. We all thought everything else. It's just been Loki and Doctor Strange. And
yeah,
I guess a little bit of Spider-Man No Way Home. Like those were the
yeah. I
ones.
mean, we've definitely teased it. We teased the word multiverse in Far From Home. We got some of it. I think they've been slowly leaking some of it for a while. Far From Home, they mentioned that word multiverse. Um, I think that I know they ended up using it as a boner joke, but I think that Evan Peters' character, we will learn that that has some sort of multiversal ramifications. I don't
Mhm,
think that's just a one-off thing. I think that's a planned thing. I think that they will somehow reveal that that's actually his character.
mhm,
Um, I think Spider-Man No Way Home obviously had some multiverse stuff, and um, Doctor Strange. So yeah, we're getting some of that now for sure. I think we'll get a decent amount more in Quantumania. I think that's going to be that is the next movie, but I think that'll be the next time we see, because I don't think the rest of these movies of Phase 5 will have much to do with the multiverse. Um, right now, Phase 5 is Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, Captain America: New World Order, Thunderbolts, and Blade. So yeah, I think Quantumania will definitely get into that world, but I don't think the rest of them necessarily will. Maybe some of the TV shows might touch on something. Loki obviously will. That may be it, honestly, with the TV shows too. So they'll keep teasing it, but I don't think we're gonna get a ton of it for a while still.
Maybe Agatha with all that, maybe, who knows?
Could, yeah.
Especially because I saw where it's rumored Wanda will be in it, and it's supposed to be after Doctor Strange, like, the moments of that. Who knows if that's true?
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see if that happens.
Um, but yeah, that I think that just kind of describes Phase 4 in a nutshell. Just a lot of things happen with it,
Yeah.
and they gotta fix some bugs in Phase 5, and maybe because Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania looks good, the visual effects of that. Who
Yeah.
knows when we see it, but the preview, I'm like, "Oh, like, that looks pretty good." But again, they change trailers all the time. They already did.
Yeah.
The Comic-Con one where he says, "If I killed you before," then it shows in the movie theater where he goes, "So what's it gonna be?" Like, they've already kind of
Did you catch the moment in Wakanda Forever that they changed? I haven't gone back and rewatched the trailer again, so maybe I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure in the trailer, the line that Ramonda says about my entire family is gone, wasn't that in like the courtroom scene, or was like with the United Nations scene or whatever that group of people was?
I thought
Wasn't that didn't
yeah,
she wasn't that behind her? I don't know. I have to
yeah,
go back and rewatch it. I was thinking though that when she said that line in the trailer that it was in that room,
yeah,
but
that's
that's
right.
not where she said it.
No,
She
she says
actually
in
said
Wakanda.
it to in Wakanda to her people.
Yeah,
So I thought I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to go back and rewatch it. But
that's a good point. I think
let's
that's right.
let's rank Phase 4.
Okay, because when I did, I forgot a movie, so I had to do it while you were talking. I was like, "Wait, where's Eternals?"
That's
I didn't
fine.
type Eternals in there.
There's 7 of them. There's 7 movies. We're not going to worry about the TV shows. Let's rank from 7 to 1 the movies.
Do
You want
you
to
think
start or
you
do you want me to start?
do you think I just wanna know, do you think you know my number 1 movie?
I mean, I have a guess what your number 1 movie is, but I may be wrong.
I think
No,
that
well, I don't think that's your number 1. I
okay.
think you have it pretty high. You certainly have it higher than I do, but
Oh,
I
I'm
don't know
sure I
that it's your
do.
number 1.
I'm sure I do. I mean, you wanna go from bottom to top or top
Let's go from bottom to top one at a time. You want me to
so
start or do you want to start?
go ahead. Go ahead, because 'cause
Okay.
you're way more better at this than I am.
Okay. My number 7 is Black Widow.
Yep.
Um, it is far and away the weakest. Um, again, we talked about it before. It wasn't necessarily the fault of the movie,
It's where
but
they put it.
the choice to release it in the where they did it just didn't work. It was
No.
just it's unfortunate because I really like Scarlett Johansson and I like that character, and it's unfortunate that that was her send off essentially because we won't see her anymore unless they do. So I mean, they could bring her back. I shouldn't say that, but for all intents and purposes, her character is dead. So
Mhm.
for that to be her send off, I don't think was all that satisfying. It's unfortunate. I don't think it's the worst movie of the MCU. I think there's a few that are below that in my opinion. Um, but I of the phase 4, I do think it was the weakest.
Yep. That's my number 7 also, is
Yeah,
Black Widow. Like I said,
yeah.
I understand why it's in phase 4 because you're introducing people that are gonna be in Thunderbolts,
It had
but
no business being in phase 4. It
no, like,
had no business. That movie,
none.
they realized that they screwed up by not giving her her own movie. That movie should have came out around Civil War because that's where it took place timing wise. They should have released that movie. They should have given her her own movie. Um, you can see you. I'm sure you can notice a trend now. This used to be a very male dominated group of main superheroes. When we started, the Avengers was Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Hawkeye, um, Captain America. We're starting to really a lot of the mantles are being mantles, so to speak, are being handed off to female characters. Um, she deserved to have a movie long ago. Her character did. I'm not saying it would have made the movie any better or any worse, but it would have made more sense.
They
and
could
it
have even
wouldn't.
put that after Infinity War because like Ant-Man and the Wasp came out afterwards. You could have stuck it right in there. You could have stuck it in before Infinity War came out.
Even if it was that exact same movie that just came out 4 years earlier, 3 years earlier, I already then would have had it up 4 5 spots higher. The placement alone just docked so many points for me.
Yep.
So whatever. Yeah, that's definitely my number 7. All right, my number 6. I this hurts. This hurts to put it this low because I do think it should have been a lot better than it was. But it's Eternals. It's Eternals. The movie had so much potential. And as I already said, I think it is visually speaking. I think it's probably the strongest of the whole phase. It may be one of the best looking movies of the entire MCU, and that's saying something. It had a Oscar winning director. It had a great cast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the premise looked cool. It just wasn't very good. And it did not help that it came out around the same time as Dune, which felt like the exact same movie, just better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but it's easily I in my opinion, I have 3 top tier, 3 middle, 2 middle tier, and 2 bottom tier, and this is easily
Yep.
bottom tier for phase 4.
Eternals is also my number 6. I think we're on the same page when it comes to these movies. The rest of them are going to be on
Correct.
different parts.
Correct.
Um, I do think Eternal storyline didn't work either with those
No.
characters. Like you
No, it
said, it
didn't.
looked good. It
It
looked
was a
good.
mess.
It was yes, it was complete. Like you want to talk about high expectations. Doctor Strange was probably the most. This one did just from
Yeah.
like the cast, what it could do, what they talked about, and then just didn't stick the landing of what they wanted to. One of the swings at the ball that they missed. Like this is
Yep.
gonna work. Nah, it didn't work. You
Yep.
know. So I am in full agreement on Eternals being number 6. In that we're on the same page. Now this is where it's gonna
This is where it's going to end.
yes.
All right, my number 5. My number 4 and 5 are very interchangeable. We've talked about them already ad nauseum on the show. I think one of them is better than the other. I enjoyed the other one better than the other. They both came out this year, but I can go in whichever order you want for these, but I will go Doctor Strange 5 and Thor 4. Um, I
Ooh.
I know, I know.
Ooh.
I'm sorry.
Ooh.
I enjoyed Thor more than I enjoyed Doctor Strange, but I do think Doctor Strange was better than Thor. So that's really they're very interchangeable for me. Um, we've already talked about them a lot. Maybe it was the expectations of Multiverse of Madness that lowered it for me. But either way, they're not either. Both of them are in that middle tier for me. The other 3 are, in my opinion, are a lot better than these 2. They're not bad. They're like middle of the road MCU movies, and that's okay. They don't all have to be like the best things we have. But in my opinion, they were both very middle of the road MCU movies. So I have Doctor Strange 5 and Thor Love and Thunder 4.
My 2 are interchangeable also, but they're not what
The
you
same. Yeah, I figured.
put. One of them's the same. And
Thor
it's
Love and
Thor
Thunder.
Love and Thunder.
Yep.
5 is Wakanda Forever.
That's fair.
Now I have
That's
Thor
fair.
at 4. Now the only reason why I do that is because I enjoy Chris Hemsworth more than characters in Black Panther
Yeah,
for me.
that's understandable.
But again, like I said at the beginning, if I go back and rewatch Wakanda Forever, I might come back and say, you know what, and watch Thor again. You know, if I go see that or watch it again on when it's out, be like, you know what, I'm going to interchange this. I'm going to move this up to,
Yeah.
4. And that's why this is always changing for me because I have to rewatch them and think about it and go, okay, but I just enjoy Thor character. I enjoy Chris Hemsworth's character. I enjoyed some of the comedy in Thor, even though some of it was forced. We've already talked about that. Black Panther, just some of the clunkiness for me. How much they had to do. It wasn't as good as the first one. So for me, like that's where it's again, it's not a bad movie. It's not a bad movie whatsoever. But for me, 5 and 4 is Thor: Love and Thunder, and Wakanda Forever can be moved.
Yeah. Okay, so my top 3. My number 2 and 3 are also fairly interchangeable. I haven't totally come to terms with this order yet. And if you ask me a week from now, I might change it. But as of right now, I have Shang-Chi 3.
Ooh.
I think Shang-Chi was a really good movie. I think it fell apart at the end.
Yes.
And that's unfortunate. I really enjoyed it. It was, certainly one of my favorites of last year, and it's, top 15 Marvel movie for me. I have it one spot lower than this number two, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's very interchangeable for me. But I have it at number three.
Yeah, I guess you could put that with me. 3, 4, and 5, it could be interchangeable.
Yeah.
I have the same movie. I have Shang-Chi at 3.
Yeah.
Like you said, visually I liked it. The comedy I liked it. The actor I really enjoyed. But like you said, at the very end, it became very predictable what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Um, I know we're going to see him again. I just hope it's soon because I really did enjoy.
Yeah. We
I
will.
was
He'll be very much a part of for future movies for sure.
Yes, so I have that at 3 as well. The action in it was great too. I don't want that to be taken away from like the filming of the action scenes and that were great up until the end. Up until the end, you go where you could see what's about to happen. And it was just different. Again, a lot of these Marvel movies have been different. Eternals is different. This movie was different, but this different hit the landing. They
Yeah.
stuck the landing perfectly with this one. Um, so yeah, now to me that could be interchanged too.
Yeah.
But I have it at 3 too. So far we're okay. Besides 4 and 5, we're okay. This
Yeah.
is
We've
where
switched.
maybe
We've switched a few. Um. All right. I have Black Panther number two. Um. I think that of all seven of these movies, I think Black Panther is the best. But I did not enjoy it as much as my number one. Um, so that's probably why I have it there. I think it could be very interchangeable with Shang-Chi for me right now. Um, I do think it had its flaws. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it is leaps and bounds below the first Black Panther, in my opinion. Um, but I do think it's a better movie than Shang-Chi. And I think it's a better movie than the ones below it. Did I enjoy it as much as some of those other ones? No, not really, but it's a movie about grief. This
Mhm.
entire movie is about grief. So like you're just not going to have the same type of enjoyment experience with that kind of movie. It's a drama. This is an absolute drama. There's no lightheartedness in this movie other than an occasional joke or two. Like it's it. Like that
Mhm.
is such a serious movie, and that doesn't make it a bad movie. But it's just a very different type of experience. So for that reason, I have it right now at number two, but I do think it is interchangeable with Shang-Chi for me uh, at 2 and 3.
All right, my
Your number
number
two, I know what your number two is.
it is Doctor Strange in the
Okay.
Multiverse of Madness at number 2
Yeah.
for personal reasons and for other reasons. One, I'm just a big Benedict Cumberbatch person. I do enjoy a lot of his movies. There's some he has that are whatever, but I do enjoy him as an actor. Um, I think what hurt this movie a little bit was the expectation. I think that kind of puts this little. It's the title and the expectation that dampened it. For I don't I, I don't know why I rewatched it. Like I went and saw it again in theaters. I watched it probably twice when it came out on Disney Plus. I just enjoyed the movie. There's a lot more things that could be done with it. Obviously, they could have had other characters. They could have done more multiverse stuff. They could have done this and that. The way they handled the Illuminati could have been done different. I think the Benedict Cumberbatch and Olsen duo there was great. I just enjoyed that. I enjoyed America Chavez. I always enjoy Wong. I think he's a great, great actor, great character. So just for me, and this is for me as a person who likes those actors and characters, I just like the movie. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it a lot. And rewatching it, I haven't changed my opinion on it. I just think expectations really dampened some of it where, oh, this is what this is about. And is it perfect? No. Black Panther's not perfect. This isn't perfect. You know, another thing with Phase 4 is some things felt rushed without any expectation. Like that's why I like Namor when they showed why he is the way he is. If they showed Wanda how exactly she got to that point, and maybe we see that in Agatha, maybe that's exactly how we figure that out.
Yep.
Who knows? But that's why it's number 2.
So basically, our 2 and 5s were switched.
Yep.
Everything else has been the same. So,
Yep.
all right, yeah, number one for both of us is going to be Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Yep.
Spider-Man: No Way Home. As I said, I don't think it's necessarily. I think personally, Black Panther might be a better movie than No Way Home. Um, because I do think Spider-Man No Way Home also had its flaws story-wise.
Mhm,
Uh, but theatrical experience has to play a part in this, and
mhm,
the theatrical experience for Spider-Man No Way Home was only behind maybe Infinity War and Endgame, in terms of the MCU. Just it was such a fun movie. It
mhm,
was a fun movie. Um, Seeing both Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield back on screen with together, like that was surreal. Seeing all those villains, Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina and Jamie Foxx, like it was just great. It was just a fun time at the movies. And
mhm,
while I don't know that it's the strongest of the phase, I'm not even sure it's the strongest Spider-Man movie. I think you can make an argument that Homecoming is a better movie than No Way
mhm.
Home. But it was just a fun movie, and I can't discount that. And to me, it's easily my number one. For that
Yep,
reason.
'cause I did not see Infinity War in theaters. I saw Endgame in theaters twice, and both times I saw it opening weekend and the
Yep.
next one. Both times was great. Same
The
thing.
the ending of Infinity War in a theater on opening night. Oh my god. Like the Endgame thing with like the portals and all that stuff, like that was like a ruckus crowd. And like
Yes.
the Mjolnir thing with Captain America, like that led to eruptions. But just the feeling, just being in a crowded theater on opening night when everything turns to dust
Mhm.
was just incredible. So yeah, that but go on.
Well, that's how it was in Endgame. In Endgame, when you had the characters come back, you had Captain America pick up the hammer, you had the characters come back, and then Tony Stark dying. Like, those 3 things in Endgame were just an emotional roller coaster that people were cheering, standing up, doing this. Then in Spider-Man, when Andrew Garfield comes running through the thing and takes his thing off, everybody's cheering. Then when Tobey Maguire walks through, that place
Yep.
just erupts.
Yep.
Or I guess at the beginning when William Dafoe pops in as Green Goblin, as soon as he comes pouring
Yeah.
in, that was like the very first thing that explodes, and then it's just. Um, I think Endgame might be a little bit better than No Way Home and the theater
Yeah.
part, but
Yeah.
you're right. It was just different. And No Way Home
Yeah.
was like all fun. It was all like, and then when they're all swinging together, they're all like all 3 Spider-Mans from the trailer when they're all erased, and then you see, you're like, so it was just a fun time. Um, and you do have to take that into account. Yes, clunkiness, the speed of the storyline, and Matt Murdock. See, there's just a lot of things. Matt Murdock shows up, and they all cheered. Like my theater did, at least. Is when he showed up at the beginning, that place boomed, and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, like
Yeah.
people know who Daredevil is. Like, wow, cool.
Yeah, that was a good experience for sure. So yeah, I'm with you there. It's easily my number one of the phase. So but yeah, other than that, other than two and five, we switched, but everything else we were the same on. So your
Yeah.
order doesn't really surprise me. I thought I thought maybe you'd have Black Panther a little bit higher than that, but I figured your one and two would be those movies in that order. So
Well, if I watch it again, I could come back and say, you know what? Yep, I
yeah.
watched it. I thought
No,
about it.
I don't think that's I don't think it's like wrong. I really don't. I think the movie definitely had its flaws. Um, but I don't know. I think it was a little better than that. But I have it scored pretty high. I don't think it will. But in terms of like my overall MCU rankings, I have it at like 13. But that's behind even a TV show. I'm ahead of it if you count that. But it's like my 12th ranked MCU movie. Um, I think it'll finish the year in my top 10 movies of the year, but it's not gonna. It won't win anything. It's not gonna be nominated for Oscars, maybe one or two. But um, I thought it was a great way to end the phase.
Mhm,
Honestly, I think it was a. It's been a rough 3 years for the MCU. But I
mhm.
thought that this was about as strong of a finish as you could have, other than maybe ending it with No Way Home. That probably would have been the best way to end the phase four.
Yeah.
But this one was pretty good. So
What if they did do that? What if they did? Because it was. I think Doctor Strange was supposed to come out before all that. So
yeah,
like,
it might have
it was
been. I
supposed
don't
to be
know.
lower.
It's hard to know with like Sony because they're kind of working on their own schedule. Um, but
And
good
and Mulholland
stuff.
And Marvel had to we have to remember it was rough. It was rough with COVID, it
Yeah.
was rough with everything, and they had to change storylines. They
Yep.
changed storylines back and forth due to COVID. Like we said, Doctor Strange, that kind of thing was supposed to be before Spider-Man, No Way Home, and they had to refilm a ton.
Yeah.
They had to refilm and add things and, like but that's not just that, like, Black Adam did it, they had to film at the end, at the very end. Doctor Strange, like, the refilming they had to do was done 4 to 6 weeks before the movie even came out. So it was just a lot of stuff they had to do, but
Yeah.
we're on to phase 5, which Ant-Man looks pretty good.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like a CGI cluster, but it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So, and then Guardians comes out after that, and I know Guardians 2 wasn't exactly the cream of the crop, but the first Guardians was still one of my absolute favorite MCU movies. So, I still have very high expectations for that. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, I don't think this was a particularly strong year for the MCU. In my opinion, I don't think that any of them were the best things they've done. So hopefully next year's a little better, but I'm not gonna bank on that.
Nope.
We'll see.
Uh, it will start off strong, then, like you said, what kinda ruins them is the TV shows, so the TV shows have to kind of pick it up.
Yeah,
And Daredevil said they're gonna start filming, it's gonna take 11 months to film it, so
it's a long show. It's a lot of
well,
episodes.
18 episodes, and they're probably gonna be 45 minutes to an hour if they're gonna go by the Netflix route,
Yep.
and, we'll see. Um, Echo will be out too, I'm curious to see how that fits into Daredevil. Punisher's supposed to be coming back, I'm sure he's gonna it's just gonna be there's things that they're getting out.
Yeah.
White Vision's now one of the TV shows apparently, so that's interesting.
A
Interesting
lot of
take.
rumors. A lot of rumors.
It's an interesting choice if that's what's gonna happen.
That sounds like it's setting up the West Coast Avengers, is what I believe is going to be the case there, which we've already seen some of those characters. But I don't know. I mean, we already know what Phase 5 is, so none of these things are going to come out before 2024. So
And if we don't get any Fantastic Four news soon, I'm gonna go see Kevin.
every time they announce anything, I just assume it's Reed Richards. Anytime they say so and so has been casted in an undisclosed role, it's a member of the Fantastic Four. So until they actually cast somebody, that's just every time. That's all my tweets are going to be.
Well, and then I like Harrison Ford.
I do too.
That's gonna be great.
Looking forward to Thunderbolts.
Grumpy
All
old
right,
man
Steve.
as a general.
Let's shut her down. I got another show I got to record sometime
All
soon.
right, well, that's another Geek Corner for Wakanda Forever and our Phase 4 rankings besides the TV shows because it's not worth the time because of what they are. Besides Loki and WandaVision, it does not matter.
Pretty much. Pretty
Um,
much.
Logan, thanks for being here. Birthday recording.
Hey, real quick. What are your thoughts on James Gunn heading up DC? You in or you out?
I'm in.
Okay.
I'm in.
That's all I wanted to know. Yes, happy birthday, Steve. Go enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully your Bears don't suck today, but
Oh, they will.
yeah, I'm sure they will. Who do they got today?
The Lions.
Oh, they'll lose. The Lions are good, but that doesn't matter. The Bears will suck.
Hey, the worst two defenses going at it.
I already know your opinions on the Bears, so you can save that for another pod.
All right. Well, thanks for watching or listening. Like, subscribe, and follow, rate on Apple and iTunes, all that good stuff. Check out Logan's podcast. No One Asked This podcast. It's going through the roof with football and basketball, especially basketball. To the moon with basketball being back.
We'll see. Had a couple post game shows. We're gonna start doing some live post games, I think. So if you're around when some of these games, I know you're busy basically every night, but feel free to jump in and chat with us. So
I'm gonna do my
those. May not start Monday, but I think we might be shooting to start that this weekend when they head to Las Vegas. So
yep, I'll try to do that. But go check out that.
You're gonna be busy.
No One Asked Us podcast because no one asks them besides myself. I'm the only one that asks. So
appreciate you, Steve. Happy birthday.
Thanks. We'll see everybody next time.